You got it, Rabbi Green?
I got it, yeah. Learning sponsors. Martin Lippman and family in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bat Pinkas. Friends of Herb Jeremiah, Tzvi Ben Zev. Friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel Ben Yaakov. Friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir. Belle and David Adler in memory of her father, Ayel Ben Yosef Cohen. Those who were inspired by our Rebbetzin Emerita Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Esther Malka Bat Mishum Yisachar. Gail and Leslie Kaplan in memory of their parents. Mushka Sprinzer Bat Yosef Chaim Bechava, Chanan Ben Moshe Eliezer Bechana, Pesha Bat Shmuel Yitzchak Halevi Vitzipora, Isra Ben Yoel Moshe Cohen Bechana. Rexford Friends of Gladys Sherman, Gutta Bat Meir. Michael Klein and Friends of Judah Klein, Yehuda Tzvi Ben Chaim. Marsha Braun in memory of her husband, Rav Yerachmel Ben Shmuel. Friends of family of Arthur Ritholtz, Mordechai Yudel Ben Baruch Leib Cohen. Friends and family of Sigi Bessler, Shalom Shraga Ben Dov. A month of learning by Reuven and Susan Podolsky in memory of his mother, Fredel Bat Shraga Feivel. By B. Pizer in memory of her sister, Rivka Bat Avram Michal Halevi. Michael and Judith Koretsky in memory of his brother, Avram Ben Gershon. A week of learning by Barbara Stern in memory of her father, David Matcha Ben Zevieta. Today is the 20th, right? There are no individual days of learning today. Hashem is having a liyak, make her free of that, Hashem Shamatzliach, Chobel Yisrael, Rivka Ben Shia.
Amen. Rabosai, we are on Daf Mem Zayin Amud Beis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think 7 lines to the bottom after the 2 dots. Ibailu. Now, yesterday we were involved, but later we'll pass it today actually. But we're involved in the argument between the Chachamim and Rebbe. What's the argument? If a Bala Chotzer, if an owner of a courtyard gives somebody permission to come in, by virtue of his giving permission, does he automatically assume responsibility for protection and damages? And he has to make sure that no damage takes place, and the Baal Chotzer is responsible. So the rabbis say the second he gives permission, it's implicit, even though he didn't say it. It's as if he said, "I'll be responsible." And according to Rebbe, no. Even if he gave permission, only if he explicitly accepted responsibility. But if he didn't, he's not responsible. Good. Now the Gemara wants a little side issue. Okay, and that is what? Okay, let's say, forget about the argument. Whether it's Rebbe where he gave permission, or whether it's the Chachamim and it's implicit that he gave permission. But assuming it's a case where he gave, whether he explicitly took responsibility like Rebbe says, or whether it was implicit like the Chachamim say, but how much when he did take responsibility? What did he say? I'll be responsible that I won't do damage in my courtyard. Okay, but am I responsible that something else is going to come into my courtyard from outside? That we have to see. Ibailu. That was the query. Whenever the Balabais did accept responsibility, whether implicitly, according to the rabbis, or explicitly according to Rebbe, Mahu, what's the law? The Nafshehu the Kabbalah is he only talking about making sure that he himself will not damage the guy he gave permission to. Oh, Dilma feeling the Tirusa the Alma Kabbalah. He even accepted that the guy he gave permission to won't be damaged by damagers that come from outside the courtyard. Comes the Gemara and says, Tashma, come, I'll bring you a raya. I'll show you a proof that if a guy gave permission, he accepted responsibility to protect the enterer even from damages from outside. Where do we see the Tani Rabbi Huda Bar Simon, Benizik and the Bay Karna, just like we know Rav Chia Ravoshia collected Brisas, Karna also was a collector of Brisas. Yes, he made it. So in the Nezikin and the laws of damages, the Brisas of Karna, we learn the following. A guy went to his friend's courtyard and brought in produce without permission. And now an ox came, not the ox of the courtyard owner, from outside. An ox from person 3, the Achlan, and the ox from outside ate it. Patur. Now, what it says, he's exempt. We're assuming who's exempt? The owner of the courtyard. Why? Because there was no permission. But if the guy brought the produce with permission of the owner of the courtyard, it sounds like what the owner of the courtyard is obligated to pay for the damage. Sounds like what? Even though the damage was from an ox that came from outside, the owner of the courtyard, because he gave permission, is obligated. No, he said, man pater, man chayiv. Who was exempt and who was obligated? La pater balachatzer, b'chayiv balachatzer. Isn't it that the owner of the courtyard was exempt when he didn't give permission? When he didn't give permission, and he's obligated when he did give permission. So you see when he gave permission, he took responsibility even from damages from the outside, and that's the simplest way to read it. I mean, isn't that? I don't have to read it that way. Low. That's not the case at all. Potter balashor. It's talking about what? That the third party who owned the ox is exempt if the enterer didn't have permission. V'chayav, and the third party whose ox came into the courtyard is obligated. Pardon me. Is obligated. The owner of the ox is obligated if the enterer did have permission. I said, what are you talking about? Exactly, Gemara says that doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about? He says, what on earth does the third party have to do with any permission that the courtyard gave? He says, my Bershus or my Shalom Bershusika. If you're talking about the owner of the ox, he's a third party. Who cares whether person two, the owner of the court, gave permission to the person who brought in the produce? What's another? That's a non sequitur. That's a good word to make people think you're smart. Amri, they said, Bershus Havilan Shem Bershus Rabbi says, no, you're making a mistake. Here's the difference. Remember that there's a law. Remember, when it comes to eating, okay, in the case that they calculate the produce, you remember what's the rule? Shane eating is only obligated what in the courtyard of the damagee, but in a public place is not. So now here's the question: when the guy brought in the stuff into the courtyard, is it his courtyard or not? He's coming to somebody else's. Is it the courtyard of the damagee or not? When the owner gave the person permission to bring the produce in, so now what? Okay, now by giving him permission, he's really, so to speak, given him a place. He's given him the ground underneath to use. So he's made him a partner. He is now also, so to speak, an owner of the courtyard. So and therefore, when the animal from outside eats it, it's eating in a private domain, in the domain of the damagee. And eating in the domain of the damagee is obligated. But when the owner of the courtyard didn't give permission to the guy to bring the produce in, now it's eating in the public domain. He doesn't own anything. He's as far as he's concerned, he's in the middle of nowhere. He doesn't own that piece of property. The shame and Shane in the public domain is exempt. This is an important point. We have cases like you probably know when we sell chametz each year to the goy. So one of the things you're doing, whether you may something depends how detailed the paper you give to the rabbi is, that you sign. But the truth is that when all the people who are selling the chametz, through the rabbi to the goy, they're giving the goy a place in their own house. You understand? For him to make a kinyan on. You understand? They're giving the ground underneath. Let's talk about it one time. There's certain things that are assumed. That we do. So over here, if I give the guy permission, I let him use the courtyard. It's his courtyard. So now we said, even though the permission is between the owner of the courtyard and the bringer inner of the produce, it really affects the third party. Why? Vis-a-vis whether his animal ate in the public domain or in the domain of the damaging. Yeah, it's okay. It's over here. It's the third party, different guy. Different guy. Different guy. Now, okay. Furthermore, Toshma. Further, we're gonna try again. We're gonna bring you a proof that when a guy gives permission, whether implicitly or explicitly, he's accepting responsibility even for damage that's done from outside of his courtyard. Let's bring a proof. Toshma, come on, bring a proof. And this time I'm gonna get you because you're not gonna be able. I'm going to make it a case where the damage isn't chain. You're not going to be able to play this trick whether it's the courtyard of the damagee or not. I'm going to bring you a case of one of Gori. It doesn't make a difference. You're not going to be able to play the trick you just played on me. Now what? He says, Toshma, come on, bring you a proof. You can't do it now. Here's a brisa. Here, a guy brought his ox into the owner of the courtyard without permission. And an ox came from an outer guy number 3 from outside, and he gored the bringer in his potter. Okay, he's exempt. We're assuming who's exempt? The owner of the courtyard. Why? Because he didn't need permission. But if the guy brought the ox in with permission, chayev sounds like what? The owner of the courtyard is going to be obligated for the damage that the third party ox damaged. Man potter uman chayev. What's the simplest way to read? Who is exempt and who is obligated? Lav potter balachatzer v'chayev balachatzer. Isn't it that the owner of the courtyard is potter and the owner of the courtyard is obligated? And therefore you see clearly that when a guy accepts responsibility, it's even for damage from outside his own courtyard because he has to pay for the third ox third party ox that came in. Yes, but why? Because it's stronger. Because what you played a trick on me when I asked you before, you said, "Oh no, this is just." Ironically, the third party is affected by the permission because it decides whether the bringer inner is chatzar and nizak or not chatzar and nizak. So I said, "Oh, I'll get you. You try to play a trick on me, you made it shame. I'll make it. I'll do it goring now. You can't play that trick. It's not going to make a difference. Chatzar and nizak or not chatzar and nizak. Goring has no difference. That's why this is better. That's why he brought it." Okay, he says, low. He says, you're still wrong. He says, Pater balashor, b'chai balashor. It's talking about the obligation of the third party. I said, 1 second. Now it really doesn't make sense. If you're talking about the third party is obligated or not obligated, my now you can't do what you said before. It has nothing to do with chain. There's no chatzar nizak here. What are you talking about? What's the difference when it's goring? It's goring. Who cares who's goring you? If you gore any place, you have to pay. The guy says, "Nah, don't worry." He says, "Hi, money." Rabbi Tarfon, he says, "Right, but you have to know the trick." This is according to Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Tarfon, we learned in the past what the Amar Meshuna Karen. He says, as long as Karen is strange, even if it's a tom, as long as it's not the normal behavior of an animal, which Karen is not. On the contrary, Rabbi Tarfon held what? He held that as opposed to the Chachamim hold what that a Karen that's tom. A goring that's not a worn ox always pays half damages. He says no. Remember, we learned earlier. He says no, and chatzar nizak you pay full damages. So now we have to just reinterpret. Birashur. So now what it means when the first ox had permission to be in the courtyard, Haviyallah Karen bechatzar nizak. We can shove this in again. According to him, it makes a difference. It's Karen where in the courtyard of the damagee. Why? Because since he had permission, so he owns the ground. He owns the ground to put his ox on, and therefore what? It's chatzar nizak. Okay, nezek sholem b'shalim. So when it said it's chayev, it really means what? He's chayev to pay what? Nezek sholem. Bereshus when he pardon me. Okay, Bereshus. Pardon me. Bereshus. Havil and Karen b'chatzar nizak. When I read it wrong. When he has permission. It's Karen in the damagee's property. Why? Because since he has permission, he owns part of the courtyard. And therefore, the third party is going to pay full damages. The Rabbi Tarfon says in the courtyard of the damagee, you pay full damages. And but when the first ox didn't have permission to come in, okay, it's Karen. Now it says Rishus Rabbi just means it's not the chatzar nizak. It could be chatzar shitofim, whatever you want. Don't make a difference. It's Karen already in the public domain. Why? Because since he didn't have permission to come in, the Baal Chatzar didn't give him property in his property. Okay, and therefore what? And therefore, even according to Rabbi Tarfon, that's a chatzar nizak. You don't pay half damage. So what does it mean when it said pater? It didn't mean pater completely, exempt him and exempt from full damages. So you said when he's obligated means obligated full damages, exempt means exempt from full damages, but he has to pay half damages. Right. So what do you do? 1 second. So he turned the trick around back on him. He said, listen, he says, you think I can't get a courtyard of a nizak and a courtyard of not of the nizak by goring? I can. Why? Because if I use Rabbi Tarfon, since Rabbi Tarfon made a difference between the domain of the damagee, even by goring, in this case, I can play the same trick that we did before with what? With eating, I can do with goring. That's the trick.
According to the Havamina, when we said that he's a Kabul Shmir, that means outside ox comes in and damages this guy's ox, he would be high.
Right, but we didn't do it.
My question is, if that guy Bershus, that shore goes out, and then an outside ox pours him out there somewhere else.
I don't think it's. I really don't think so. It's not enough. So I don't think so. But let's talk about it afterwards. Okay, now, but the main point is what? Twice we tried to prove. You had a query. When the guy accepted responsibility, was responsible for action that came from outside? The answer is twice we tried to say yes, and twice we said what? You can't prove it. So we had 2 times a raya and 2 times a stira. In other words, 2 times a proof and 2 times what? A disproof of the proof. Okay, good. Now, says the Gemara. Now, this is very interesting. I want to remind you of something in the past, it's something in the past. You remember yesterday we made a difference. We said, even though at the outset of yesterday, we thought that anybody that makes a transaction of permission, whether they give it or whether they receive it, takes responsibility. In the end, what did we say yesterday? We said it's not true. We said even the rabbis who say that there's an implicit acceptance of responsibility was only when a person gives permission, but not when a person receives permission. Now today it's going to look like we're reneging on what we said yesterday, and the answer is don't worry, don't get nervous. We're not reneging. It's going to look like it, but we're not reneging. It's not true. We don't say that when a person receives permission, they take on responsibility, even according to the rabbis. We're not saying it. It looks like it, but we're not. Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do this? It's famous. It's not my line. Today there's hypertension. People got to worry about heart problems and anxiety, etc., etc. So it's a mitzvah to reduce anxiety. So since I know you're going to have anxiety, because it looks like it's going to look as contradicting yesterday, I'm telling you before, and you shouldn't have anxiety. Everybody should be healthy and live for a long, long time. I'm telling you, don't worry, we're not contradicting what we said yesterday, even though it looks like. Okay, yes, well, fine. We'll be in the end. It'll all be fine. Don't worry about it. Don't get nervous. Okay, that's also whenever I read an adventure story, I don't get nervous. Why? Because even I know the hero is in danger. I know the book's about him. He's not going to die. I don't worry about it. I don't get nervous. Okay. Yeah. What do you mean? No, it's usually the same thing. Anything. The hero's not going to get. The hero's not going to die. Usually not. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so reducing 10. Get ready. Okay, now. Said also a certain woman went into bake. She had a guy has an oven. Not today. Thank God there's a lot of money around today. Not everybody has an oven. She goes to bake in somebody's house. Okay, there who has an oven. So what happens is the billy goat of the owner of the house comes along. He ate her dough. He got hot. Who missed it? He died. Okay. So Rava made the woman who came in to bake, the guest, she made her pay for the billy goat of the balabayas. Isamar says, what's going on over here? Lema pliga the Rav. Didn't we learn yesterday? We learned that nobody's responsible. I'm responsible for my property. Shouldn't damage your dog or your animal. But if your animal is going to come eat my thing, the animal damaged themselves. I didn't damage them. Didn't we say yesterday? Nobody's responsible if somebody else's animal eats their stuff. What do you want from me? Amri said, they said, get out of here. He says, we're not contradicting Rav. He says, Hassam over there, this is where it looks like a contradiction. Hassam, when did Rav say what? That I'm not responsible for your animal eating my stuff that hurts them? Shelo b'reshus. I came in without permission. Lo kibul alei. So since I didn't have permission, I didn't accept responsibility. I know that sounds like what when I do, and when I do have permission, I accept it. Don't worry, it doesn't mean that. Okay, but it looks like it. Over here, what? She came in, the householder told her, come in and use my oven. She accepted responsibility. It's not true. Don't worry about it. It looks like that. We're going to see in a minute for a whole different reason. But at the moment, the Gemara is learning it the old way. As if what? As if, wow, since she had permission, she accepted responsibility to protect the animal of the balabais. Okay, it's not true. It's for a different reason. You'll see in a second. One second. Didn't we learn yesterday? Why is this any different? Why did you say here? Because she came in to bake. She accepted to protect the animals of the balabais, of the owner of the oven. He says, Didn't we learn yesterday? A woman came into a guy's property to use the mill to grind her wheat. She came in without permission. We said that the animal of the balabais ate her stuff. Potter, what? The balabais is potter for eating it, and if the balabais' animal was hurt by the wheat, she has to pay. Okay, what's the reason why she's obligated? Because what? Because she came in without permission. But she came in with permission, she'd be exempt. You see the opposite of what you said. You said that when she comes with permission, she's accepting responsibility. Here you see she comes with permission, she's not accepting responsibility. Amri said no. Here, and this is the real truth. That's why it was all a mistake, so to speak, a mistake. We were ignoring the real truth. This is a unique case. Why is it? And God bless the Jewish people, the holy Jewish people. You'll see in 1 second. The holy, pure Jewish people. What is it? It has nothing to do with the laws it does, but it's indirect. It's because of the tremendous modesty of Jewish people that it affects the monetary law. Amri litchon chite, and he said, no. Listen, when a woman comes in to grind wheat, came in the low bayits and the Yusamidi, she has no special modesty needs. Why? Because she doesn't uncover herself in order to grind wheat. You don't need to roll up your sleeves. You don't need to roll up your sleeves. When she's grinding wheat, she doesn't roll up her sleeve. then the owner of the house can stay and what? And he can what? He watches his own animal. It has nothing. She's accepting personal responsibility. He's there. Everything's fine. She's not responsible. He's responsible for the stuff in his courtyard. But he says, of Ali day, so the watching of his own animals is on him because it always was. In our case, it's a completely unique case. It has nothing to do with permission and not with permission. That's not the point at all. He says the Meifa came in the Baya since when it comes to baking, women roll up their sleeves when they need the dough. Okay, what? And the guy can't look. And therefore, what? Marvasa, the Chatzim is talking about. So the Balabayas, who's also is a proper Jew, he leaves. He's not going to stay there and watch a woman with her arms uncovered. Therefore, not because she got permission, but because she has caused this guy to not be able to watch his stuff now for a special reason. So she has to take over. He can't watch his own stuff. She has to watch for him. So that's why she's responsible. It has nothing to do with it. Only by roundabout. It has nothing to do with those things. So we're in good shape. Now, do you understand? So one second, and yeah, no, it's also shaykh here, but it's also shaykh here, by the way. It's also shaykh to this. It is. It's also shaykh to it. But anyway, but I gotta keep. Yeah, it's also shaykh, but I gotta keep it simple. I gotta keep it simple. You're right. You're right. I'm saying you're right. It's just a big page today, Rabbi. It's a very, very big page. And even though it's a very big page, I got to tell you something because I can't. That's my job. I got to do my job. I got to do it. I'm still, when I was very lucky. My parents, my father, blessed memory, my mother, she should live me well. They grew up poor, both of them. They were poor as could be. So whoever had a summer camp, they worked in summer camps. They never went to summer camp. And God bless them. Whatever money they had, they killed themselves. I got to go to summer camp. A wonderful thing. It was a big bracha. So I went to Camp Aguda. So over there, Camp Aguda is different than other camps. Camp Aguda, I don't know what it is today. When I went, Camp Aguda had no facilities whatsoever. There was half a baseball, a half a bat. It was nothing. There was nothing there. It was the main thing in Camp Aguda was talking. Sam was talking. There was, it was a little sports, whatever you had, a half a ball, there's nothing there. So they have after they have competition, so they have competition, be two teams, and they're gonna have a scavenger hunt. The scavenger hunt, you have to go and find all kinds of crazy things, a spring, an old motor, this and that. No, here's what they asked for. They want one of the you have to bring the biggest leaf in the whole camp, the biggest leaf in town. No. So I'm there. I was a little boy, and the opposing team comes up. The guy comes out. Their captain comes up with a leaf, like an elephant ear. I never saw a leaf so big in my entire life. This big, gigantic. I said, we're gonna lose. No, the captain of my team comes up. He got no leaf. He got a Gemara in his hand. He's got a Gemara in his hand. I'm looking at it. So I said, we're gonna lose. He looks up. He says, Rabosa. He says, this is a Gemara. He says, I want you to look what's on a page of a Gemara. He says, you have the Gemara, you have Rashi, you have Tosfos, you have Rabbi Kiva Eger, you have the Masoros Shas, you have the Ein HaMishpah, you have 16 books on one page over here. He says, now a page, he says, is called what? Also what? A blot. He said, what's a blot? A leaf. He says, you have a leaf. He says, a leaf. He says, with 16 books on one page. I asked you, this is not the biggest page in town? We won. We won. We won.
You never stop learning after that, right?
We won. So I'm telling you. So today's a very big leap, Rabbi Osai. We gotta keep going. Okay, now. Okay, good.
And we'll win.
Now we're gonna learn. Now we have a few chidushim of Rava, huh? Hichnis, no? No, Hichnis Shora. Yeah, Hichnis Shora l'chatza balabayis. If a guy brought his animal into the balabayis' chatzah, Amar Rabbi says, Hichnis, that's the Mishnah, right? So he says, let me tell you about that. Hichnis Shora l'chatza balabayis lo b'rishus. If a guy brought his ox into the courtyard of the balabayis without permission, well, and the animal he brought without permission, he dug ditches and he dug pits and ditches and caves. Okay, so obviously the guy who brought it has to pay for the damage that his animal did to the courtyard. But if the owner of the courtyard, after somebody else's ox dug holes, he made his courtyard hefker. So to speak, he now by default put a bore into the public domain, he put a stumbling block in the public domain, the owner is obligated. How could that be? The Avagav Damar, even though everybody knows the famous drasha, when it came to the laws of an obstacle, each bore, when a man will dig a pit, and we learn what? Below shorbar. Only when a man makes a pit, but not an ox. In other words, if I dig a pit in the public domain and somebody falls in, that's my problem. But if my ox digs a pit, I'm not obligated. Only when I dig the pit, but not when the ox digs the pit. He says, even though that's true, so how come over here, if the ox dug the pit, how come the Bala Chotzer is high from the pit? He didn't dig it. The answer is because it's really, I'll give away the secret, because it says if he dug it in this case. Why is that? Because Hacha came this over here. He before he gave the pit away to the public domain, he had plenty of opportunity. He should have filled it in, and he gave it out. So in this case, because he should have filled it in and he didn't, okay, because it was his pit and he gave it away that way, it's as if he dug the pit that he gave to the public domain because he didn't fill it in, which is not the case. Okay, command. Okay, look, Kamaya, since he didn't fill it in, command the carry dummy. It's as if he filled it in, as opposed to when his animal does in the public domain, it's public property. It wasn't his to fill, not the problem. Good. Okay. Another law that he says, a chiddush. If he brought his ox into the owner's domain without permission, the hizik is balabais, and now the ox that he brought him without permission damaged the owner of the courtyard. Oh, balabais, who's like, or the owner of the courtyard by running into it hurt himself. Okay, so he's obligated. The owner of the ox is obligated. Now he says something. The next part is strange. Ravat's patur. If the animal, falls down, drops down, and here breaks utensils or whatever it does, or falls down and sits on the ground, and the owner runs into it, he's exempt. I said, what are you talking about? Mishum the Ravat's patur. What does that have to do anything? So what? There's no reason. He came without permission. He's obligated. Who cares? So it's damaged by sitting down. So what? He should be obligated for everything. Okay, for the utensils or for the guy. He said, Puppy says no. You see, you don't understand. My Rabbits here doesn't mean he dropped down his body. Mashahir beats Galolim, he dropped down feces. He went to the bathroom. And the clothing of the Balabayas got dirty. The Havi Galolim bar, because in this case, what the feces are an obstacle, a bar. Okay, and why is he potter? Because the special rule of bar, remember, it says what? We learn since then. I want to tell the drasha now because it's be important for the next few minutes. The Torah says, it says what? It says, "V'nafal shama shor or chamor." The Torah tells us if an ox, okay, or a donkey falls in. So the Torah didn't have to say chamor or shor. She would have said v'nafal shama nofel. Remember, like we learned by a makkah, it's the Torah could have said v'nafal shama nofel. Something fell in. Something fell in. Why did it say an ox or a chamor? This is very important. We're gonna need it for the next while. It's tell me what? What? Shor v'lo adam. Okay, it's an ox. When do you have to pay when an animal dies? When it's an ox. But if a man dies in the pit, you don't have to pay. Chamor. Why did it have to say chamor? Below kalim. Why kalim? Because kalim is just like a man dying. Here, why is that? Because utensils, when they break, they're dead. That's the death. So therefore, dead for the death of a man or for the death of what? Of a keli, a broken keli, you don't pay. So he says over here, what? Since these feces are really what a bar, we love it. See, the bar was a kelim. Bar is never obligated on utensils. Anything whose damage it breaks, anything that breaks that becomes unfit is called a keli. You hear it's dead. It's dead. Just like a human dies. Anything becomes no good. It's called that's the death of a non-human thing, of an inanimate object. So you're exempt. Says, one second. Rava is not going to stick his neck in between Rav and Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel are the universe over here. You can't go like one or the other. That's good. What you said. What that according to Shmuel, whether you own an obstacle or you don't obstacle, it follows the rules of what? Of a bar, and it's exempt on utensils. But according to Rav, who holds what? That anything that you didn't abandon ownership to it does not have the rule of a pit. It has the rule of what? Of an ox, of your money damaging, in which case what? It will not be exempt on what? On utensils, in which case he should be obligated for his feces that he owns damaging the clothing of the balabayas, because there's no exemption. Michael, remember, how are you going to explain it according to Rav? Amar, he said, no way. But the average guy he says, okay, you can keep the feces. The average guy, okay, hey, that's my feces. The average guy is not holding on to feces. The normal case is when his animal goes to the bathroom, he says, you want to keep it, you can have it. It's okay. You can have the feces.
When did the Golem damage the Kalen?
After,
while it was going down?
no, afterwards.
No,
After, on the ground.
Why not while it was going down?
Because I told you when Shabbat it'll be ox according to everybody.
No,
Yeah. That's another guy. We're talking. It's an ox. Yeah. Okay. But yes. We're just saying the norm over here, right? Yeah. Especially the average guy is not going around. Oh, I don't want to talk about it. I really the average guy's not going around collecting the feces of his ox. I know people do with the dogs over here, but they wasn't happening. Go to his friend's courtyard with a baggie. They didn't have any baggies. They didn't have any plastic bags then. They didn't have any baggies then. There was no plastic bags. Yeah. Okay. Rava. Furthermore, another chiddush. Nichlas the chatzabala by shlo b'rishus. A guy came into his friend's courtyard without permission. You notice there's no antecedent. We know what this pronoun is. So you can say for sure a guy, maybe a guy, an animal here. There's no pronoun. There's no antecedent. There's no noun. How do we know what this is? We'll call it a man for the moment. Okay, but it could be also an animal. Okay, nichnas the chatzabala by shlo b'rishus. A guy came into the courtyard without permission. The hizik as balabais, and he damaged the owner of the courtyard. Oh, okay, balabais who's akbal. Or the owner like tripped up on him. Okay, chayav, he's obligated for the damage that he did actively, or the damage that he did, so to speak, passively. Okay, eziko balabayas, and if the owner of the courtyard damaged him, we'll see. Okay, Potter, the owner of the courtyard is not obligated. Even if the owner of the courtyard damaged him, he had no right to be there. Now, Amra of Papa, so a Papa has to say, slow down. Let me modify this. No, Amaran, he says this rule that we said that the owner of the courtyard is exempt for damaging the trespasser. Ella de lo havi yodebe. It's only when he didn't know he was there. You're right, he didn't know he's there. Heck with him. He damaged him, goodbye, Charlie. It's not his problem. If he knew that he was there, even though the guy was there without permission, if the owner of the courtyard damaged him, he has to pay him. My time. Why? What's the reason? Because the guy who ain't the trespasser has the right to say, yeah, look, you have a right to throw me out. That's correct. You don't have right to hurt me. You're not allowed to hit me. You can't do that. You can throw me out. You can't damage me. Now, this is a funny word. It says they are going according to the reasoning. Now, the truth is, it's only one of them. The reasoning that we're about to bring is either Rav Papa or Rava. So it means to say, though, in other words, so to speak, what Papa, Rava, and as Rav Papa explained him, which is a principle, that it goes according to the explanation that one of them gave. The two of them are explaining, are holding a position that one of them gave a principle. What's the principle? What is the principle that explains it? In other words, we're going to see the Amar. Why is it that we just saw now what when one guy has permission, one guy doesn't. The guy who has permission is not liable, and the guy doesn't have permission is, and where they're equal, everybody has the same law. Okay, so the Amar Rava, because either Rava said the Tema, some people say Rav Papa, some people Rav Papa said it, but either way, that's going to explain everything. We learn Shnei Bershus when two guys both have permission to be in a place. For example, they're in the public domain, or they're in a shared courtyard that they both own, or even when the owner of the courtyard allowed somebody else to come. In all cases, the owner. Both guys have the same permission to be there. Okay. Oh, shneim shelo b'rishus. If both of them have permission to be there, or both don't. For example, they're running in the public domain. Are you allowed to run in the public domain? Erev Shabbos, yes. Only Erev Shabbos, but not the rest of the week. Okay, and they're both running. So if they both have permission, or they're both acting illegally, they're both legal or illegal. Heziko says that when they have the same rights, if they damaged each other actively, they have to pay. And if each guy hurt himself on the other guy's exempt. They both have the same rule. You're obligated for active damage and not obligated for passive damage. Taima the Shnei and Bershus or Shnei Shlo Bershus. But what's the reason they both have the same law? Because either they were both legal, or they were both illegal. But if one of them was legal, so to speak, had a right to be there, and one didn't have a right, one had a right to run, and one not, so to speak. Okay. Then it's not. This is the law that we just saw by Rava and Rav Papa. The Bershus Pata, the guy who had rights, he is exempt. Okay, even if he actively damaged the guy, as long as he didn't know. Shelo Bershus, and the guy who didn't have permission, he's obligated even when he was passive and the other guy damaged himself on him. Furthermore, let's go further. We learned in the Mishnah, in the end, he says, Nafal bar v'yishmeimav. We said if the ox goes in, the guy put his ox without permission in the other guy's courtyard, and the ox fell into the guy's cistern, his water cistern, his reservoir. Chayav, he's obligated. He's obligated for what? For v'yishmeimav. He fouled the water. He's obligated for the water. Amar Rabba says 1 second. He says Lo Shanu, that law. He says Ella. It's only what if it damaged it when it fell. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, when it fell. Why is that? What we in the falling itself? In other words, what? Yeah. 1 second. Yeah. And first of all, I just want to explain something. First of all, 1 second. And what do you mean? If it fell, why is he obligated at all? It's an accident. The answer is what he wasn't supposed to be there. So anyway, when you start out negligent and you end up accident, you're still obligated. That's number one. Okay, but now, it's if it damaged while it was falling. Okay, but after it fell in, okay, it fouled the water. He's exempt. My timer, okay, my timer. So it has to be it's exempt. My time. What's the reason? Have a sure bore. He says why? Because after it fell in, the ox is no longer money doing damage. It's not an ox. It's really what? It's really a pit. Once it's settled, it came to rest. It's a pit, and therefore what? Umayim kalim. We said already, like we said, what? And the water is what? The water is considered utensils. Why? Because when anything that gets broken, so to speak, or dies, gets no good. Is the same thing is kalim. Okay, okay. We don't have a pit. No pit is obligated for what? For kalim. Okay, now that was good. And we said I know. Remember, okay, now we second again. What is Rabbi saying his rule only according to Shmuel, not according to Rab? That's fine according to Shmuel. The guy didn't mafker his ox. Okay, so he says whether a guy owns the damage or doesn't own the obstacle, it's still called a bor, so it's exempt on water. El Rab the Omar Adam Afkile, but according to Rab, any obstacle is not obligated unless it's hefker. Michael, remember how you can explain Rab? He didn't mafker the ox. You have to say that according to Rab, you have to say really the true way that Rava taught was the following. This is the real tradition. Amar Rava lo shanu elash hibish migufa. He says, listen. He says, when did the guy obligated for fouling the water? It's where it fouled it because of its body. No, the ox was dirty. It was full of dirt. So it fell in, and the ox damaged it. That's a direct damage. But if the stink of the ox, okay, damaged the water, Potter is exempt. My timer for the classic reason, Grama Bialmahu. What? That is an indirect damage, and we know what Grama Bialma lo mechayev. At least in the basin, indirect damage is never collectible. We looked in the end of the mission also said what? And if Rahman, this poor guy, what a story is it?
Is that why the foul?
Yeah. Let's say if the father or his son was in there and the ox fell in and killed the poor guy, who was in there. Masham is a kofer. He has to pay what? He has to pay kofer. Remember we learned. Now he says, my 1 second, how can he pay kofer? Hatamu. This ox is the first time around. It didn't tell us it's a muad. Why is he paying kofer? There's no kofer by a tam. There's only what you pay kofer. Penance money for killing only when it's a muad. It has to have 3 times and not on the 4th time. I'm a Rav, don't worry. The muad lipol al b'nei adam b'rosas kidding. We're talking about an ox who has a tendency already. It's already 3 times. He already 3 times. He falls on people in water cisterns, in water pits, in the hole. Says Yochim, 1 second. If that's true, Bartola, 1 second. Understand? If that's what this thing does, this thing is throwing itself on people. You have to kill it. You have to kill an ox that kills people, even on the first time. How did it ever get to be? And this can't be like the other case where we didn't run away. He's in the hole, or we didn't know. We know exactly what's going on. Yeah, it's not like these other cases. Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef says the Chazi Ruka. He says, here's what happened. He says, I'll tell you what happened. He says the animal keeps seeing vegetation growing on it, the nafal, and he falls in. And he doesn't go in purposely. Now, I want to explain what the point is over here. Usually, we have kofar for example, by regular shame. We can have it, but what's the problem? Usually, kofar is only by a muad. Now, how can you have kofar by regular and shame? The answer is regular and shame, eating and tooth is muad. Remember we said they're muad from the outset. They don't need 3 times to become muad. That's the nature of animals. They eat, they trample. So over here, they eat, they trample. But ironically, This is a trampling that needs a history of 3 times. Why? Because it's weird. It's weirdo. Who's falling on? Who's falling into things of falling on people? So ironically, here it's a shane or regal, like shane or regal, but still needs to earn its muadness. It usually doesn't have to. So it had to be muad. Okay, and even though it was without intention. So that was one answer. Shmuel Amar, he says no. He says don't worry. He says we're really talking about a tom. If it's a tom, how's he paying kofar? The answer is what? He says Shmuel Amar, it's a tom. How are you paying kofar? Hamani Rabbi Yosef Glili, because this is the special case of Yosef Glili. Remember, with Omar, Tom Mishlam Chatzi Kofar. Rabbi Yosef Glili holds it also Tom pays kofar. He just doesn't pay full kofar; he pays half kofar. So over here, when we said he has to pay the kofar, our Mishnah really meant what? Not full kofar, but half kofar. A mere detail. Omar Ula gives another solution. Why is he paying kofar? Again, he's a Tom. So he says what? He says I agree with you. It's Rabbi Yosef Glili, but not only is it Rabbi Yosef Glili, the Amar Rabbi Tarfa is Rabbi Glili like Rabbi Tarfa. Now what? Because Rabbi Yosef Glili holds what? That a Tom pays, a Tom does pay kofar, and it's like Rabbi Tarfon. The Omar, remember, he said Kerba Chatzanizak Nezek Shalom Shalom. And remember, Rabbi Tarfon held that anything that's different, that's mishuna, you have to pay in the damagees courtyard. You have to pay full damages. Hachanami here too. You're going to pay what? You're going to pay full, just like you pay full damages. You pay full kofar, and he gains that what? You don't have to say that what paying kofar is half kofar. He's not paying what? Full kofar. Now, what's the difference here? In Shmuel's answer, it really meant when you said chetzi kofar, it doesn't matter whether it's the Nizak's courtyard or not. You pay half kofar. It doesn't make a difference. But according to Ula, it has to be specifically what? The Nizak's courtyard. So the Gemara has the Kashi. So Bishlam Ula, it makes very good sense. Our Mishnah to Ula, the Tocha, it makes sense that the person who got killed was the father or the son of the owner of the courtyard. Why? Who's getting paid the penance money? Here it's going to be the owner of the courtyard. He's the Nizak. He's going to get paid for the father and son. So it specifically told his relatives to show that it's his courtyard. Okay, that's good according to Ula, who says what? That the whole rule was based on what? Being the courtyard of the damagee. That's why it was full damages, according to Tafra, rather than full kofar rather than half kofar. Okay, Ella the Shmuel, but Shmuel says what? It's just from Yosef Glili. It's half damages. My area, why did it have to be specifically his father or his son that was in the hole? Afilu achi, even if it was somebody else. Nami, he says, you know what? You're right. You're right. It's lavdafka. It didn't have to be his father or his son, but it happens to be normal. Who's usually in who's in the hole in a guy's courtyard is relative. Okay, now furthermore, we learned we said if the guy brought his stuff in. Okay, now we according to the Tanakam, okay, we said we said according to the first opinion that we learned, okay, we said the rabbis, anytime you come in with permission, the owner of the courtyard bears the responsibility. Okay, so now and Rebbe says no, even when he gets permission, unless he assumes responsibility explicitly, there's no implicit accepting of responsibility. Itmar was taught. Rav Amar Hilchos Tanakama. Rav says the halacha follows the Tanakama. What like the Chachamim, that when he gives permission, it's implicit that he accepts responsibility. Shmuel Amar Shmuel said no. Hilchos Rebbe. The halacha follows Rebbe. That what? That unless he gives explicit permission, he doesn't accept the permission. Now, usually, a little machlok is a poskim over here, but simply, usually the rule in the Bavli is what? Our rule is what? That in arguments about money, who wins always? Shmuel. Why, by the way? Why? You know why? Because he worked harder. Because he worked harder. Because that's why. Because he worked harder. He worked on it. He worked hard, and the decision was awarded to him because he worked hard. I will tell you one thing. I'm not late. Listen, I'll tell you something. It was a terrible thing with COVID. It was a terrible thing. Horrible things happened. But it's don't think me insensitive. But during that time, for myself personally, and believe me, I feel terrible for every suffering 1 second of anybody. It was terrible. But that being said, so where I lived, we closed the shul down and the yeshiva down for 3 months. Yeah. We closed for 3 months. So for 3 months, I didn't have to do homework for anybody else. I did whatever I wanted. All of a sudden, I was in a Gan Eden. I was home in Gan Eden. I was in the Garden of Delights with my books, and I got to do whatever I want. had no responsibilities to anybody else. So I fell into the deep ecstasy of all the great rabbis that came before us. And I got to come back and become reacquainted with the Chassam Sofer and with the Rikiva Eger and the Noda Yehuda, all these incredible people. And I had the most wonderful experience. And I'll tell you what I said to myself, I really hate it when people say, oh, Rabbi Kiva was a genius. Chazal Sofer was a genius. He was a goin. He was a goin. He was a genius. Yeah, they were geniuses, but it's not the point. I don't like it. You know why? Because it detracts from what they did. If you see what they did on paper, that's why they were brilliant. You know what? But where that stuff came from? Read what they wrote. And they worked like crazy. They killed themselves to understand what they did, how they loved every detail of God's Torah, how they looked at every nook and cranny to see what God said. And it detracts, you understand, from the incredible love that they lavished on the words of God. And when I saw the love that they had for God and for Torah, it made me fall in love with them over again. So I had a new love affair with all the great rabbis, all the great rabbis of the past. And I want you to know something. I didn't say this. The Medrash says it. Listen to this. It says, nobody, the Medrash Tanchuma, Noach, it says, nobody learns the oral law. You know why? Because it's so hard and so full of details. You got to go crazy over every single detail in the world. It says nobody learns it except for a person who loves God with all their heart and all their soul and all their might. The only person who learns Torah Shabbat Peh is a person who loves God with all their heart and all their soul and all their might, because nobody else can do it. If you're not crazy about God, nobody is going to go and kill themselves with all those details. And that's just the thing. So here you have to see the wonder, in the beauty of these rabbis. Okay, now he said, what's the last piece I want? So I said I get my punchline. Here, Shmuel killed himself. That's the point. Shmuel killed himself on Dini Mamonos. He worked harder than anybody else. And we know that he put in all the effort. We say, follow him. He did the work, follow him. And I want you to know something. I'm not late, don't worry. I speak to people all over the world all the time. And I speak to tons of people who write books. People write books, I talk to them. And you know why? Because the guy worked hard. When a guy writes a book, I talk to him. You know why? Because I know he worked hard. I call the guy, I talk to them a lot. And you know what? And sometimes they get nervous. You know why? Because people attack people. I don't know if you know what happened. You write a book, everybody tells you you're an idiot. I don't know if you know that. You write a book, you say, no, you're wrong. You're talking about this. I called the guy once, years ago, I was younger. I called the guy up and I said to him, he says, what is it? I said, he didn't understand me because I said, I just want to thank you. You wrote a great book. I had a lot of problems. You really helped me. The guy says, what? It took him 5 minutes. He was so used to being attacked. After 5 minutes, he finally understood that I was calling him to tell him that I appreciated his book. He said, what? He says, he is in Israel. He says, Yashakaya. He couldn't believe it. Whoever calls him to tell him you're okay. It never happened to him. The poor Shmagegi. This guy, nobody called him to say thank you. They called him to kill him every time. Poor guy. Okay, anyway. But the answer, Shmuel worked hard. He worked hard. And you have to know all the people we follow. That's really what happened. Yeah, they were all geniuses, were a dime a dozen in Europe. Everybody, they have to have the people with every 6 miles there was another gone in Europe. That's the way it was. That wasn't the point. There were tons of geniuses. That wasn't the point. The point was, these guys killed themselves. That was the point. Shmuel killed himself over Dini Mos. But with all that, there's still some argument here. But that's what you should know. That's the yeah. I'm saying because he did the work. He did the work. Okay, now good. So that we have an argument. Tana Rabbanan, we learn. Now, this is a very interesting point. This is not hard. It's similar to what we did before. If a guy said, "Why Kano Sharcho Ushmaro," he said, "Bring your ox into my courtyard, but you watch it. You watch it." Chayav, then what? Hazik Chayav, it did damage, so the owner of the ox is obligated. Who's ox? Okay, and if the owner of the courtyard gets damaged, Potter, then the owner of the court, pardon me, and if the guy's ox gets damaged, okay, Potter, the owner of the courtyard is exempt. Okay, then it's so now I'm going to preempt. So what's the implication? What's the implication? Since he told him you're responsible, so the owner of the ox is responsible. What's the upshot? What is the inference? What? Had he not said you're responsible, automatically when he gave him permission, who was responsible? The owner of the courtyard. Okay, but take a look at this second part. It's contradictory. He said, listen. Then it says, bring your ox in, and I'll be responsible. I'll watch it. Huzak, then if the animal gets damaged, Chayav, the owner of the courtyard is obligated. Hazik, and what? And if he did damage, Potter, the owner of the ox, is exempt. So you see what? It's a self-contradiction. First you told me what? Only when he divested himself of responsibility is he not responsible. And then you told me what? Only when he took responsibility is he responsible. So you contradicted me. In the normal case, one case you told me the normal case is he's not responsible. In one case you said the normal case that he is responsible. Self-contradiction. Now let's read it inside. The Gemara says, I already did it. Let's do it inside. Hagufa Kashi says, what? That's a self-contradiction. Amarta Kno Sharcho Shmoro. You told me what when he says bring your ox in and you watch it, Hazik Chayv who's a potter. Then if he did damage, he's obligated. And what? And if he got damaged, the owner doesn't have to pay him. Time, but what's the whole reason that the owner of the ox is responsible? The Amar Lei Shmoro, only because the owner of the courtyard said, you watch it. The Chayav Balashor, Potter Balachotzer. That's why the owner of the ox is obligated, and the owner of the Chotzer is not obligated. That why? Because he divested responsibility. Hostama, but if he gave permission without saying anything, implicitly Chayav Balachotzer, Potter Balashor, then the owner of the courtyard would be obligated, and the owner of the ox is exempt. So we say what? That implicitly, without any other specification, the owner of the courtyard, by giving permission, took responsibility. That's according to who? The Rabbanan. Okay? Ema Sefer. How do you read the second half? Bring your ox in and I'll watch him, he says. Who's Akayev? Now, if the ox gets damaged, the owner of the courtyard is obligated. Hizik, and if the animal did damage Potter, the owner of the ox is not obligated. Timer, what's the whole reason why that the owner of the courtyard is obligated? The Amarle, because he said Vanishman, he said, I'll watch it. Okay, I'll watch it. Okay, okay. Who the Mechai Balachatzer? That's why he's obligated, because he took responsibility. Upater Balashor, and the owner of the ox is exempt. Hostama, but had he just done it without any specification, okay, Chai Balashor, the owner of the ox would be obligated. Upater Balachatzer, the owner of the courtyard, would not be obligated. Stamas, if we see what without any specification, he doesn't accept watching. At Talmud Rebbe, now you're saying the opinion of Rebbe that what? That unless the owner of the courtyard, even if he gives permission, explicitly accepts it, he's not responsible. The Omar, that's holding like Rebbe, that until he accepts responsibility, the language here is hard, the box fixes it. He's not obligated to watch unless he accepted it. So Reisha Rabbanan B'Sefer Rebbe, so how to be in the first half, from one line to the next, the first half is the rabbis who say that he implicitly accepts responsibility, and the Sefer is Rebbe who says that he doesn't implicitly accept it. Amar Rabbi Elazar says, don't worry, Tav. He says, you know what? Even though we don't like to say it, in this case, we're going to have to say what? It's two different opinions speaking in one brisa. So we don't like to say it, we're going to say it. Misha Shana Zulu, Shana Zulu. First line was taught, the guy who taught the first line is not the guy who taught the second line. Rav Amai says, don't worry, I can explain it. Kula Rabbanani, both lines are really the opinion of the rabbis that say what? That when you give permission, you accept responsibility. And really what? And therefore what? It's the only reason what he says, and the only reason what that he's okay now. And so if that's true, so how come in the second half I had to say I'll watch it according to the rabbis? Even if he didn't say I'll watch it, if he gave permission, he's responsible. He says the answer is what? That word he said I'll watch it is not necessarily so. He says I did the nasiv Bereisha Shmaro since the beginning. He wanted to say what you watch it. Because he has to say, I'm not watching it. So, okay, but Talmud Sefer, and the Sefer learned by Nishma, he said, I'll watch it, even though in the Sefer, as long as he said nothing, he would have been obligated. So one opinion said what? Two opinions? One opinion said what? Both everything is Rebbe, everything is the Rabbanan. And now Rav Papa says, no way, cooler everything. I can say both halves are Rebbe who say what? That unless you accept responsibility, you are not responsible. The only thing is what? He says, like Rabbi Tarfon. And Rebbe holds like Rabbi Tarfon. Again, he holds what? The Karen in the domain of the damagee has to pay full damages. So again, we do the trick we did before. So we're going to say Potter means what? Potter and Chayiv is going to be what? Whether you can pay full damages or half damages. Hilkach. Amarle Shemaro. When he first said at the beginning, you watch it. Okay, he's saying what? I'm not here. I'm not giving you anything. Okay, lo makni le. He didn't sell him a place in his courtyard, but have you lay Karen b'chatzar nizak. So therefore, what? It's damage. What? It's Karen in the domain of the nizak. Okay, when he damaged the owners. Okay, the Karen b'chatzar nizak he's gonna have to pay full damages. Lo amarle, but if he didn't say to him shmaro, if he didn't say to him watch it, akniyakle, he really what? He really sold him part of the property. He sold him a place for Haviyalei, and therefore what? Chatzar shutafin. It's a shared courtyard. And Karen Chatzar shutafin and Mishalim and Chatzanezi. And Karen in a shared courtyard, even according to Rabbi Tarfon, only pays what? Only pays half damages. And therefore what? So it's only talking. It's only talking about whether obligated a full damages or half damages. That's we did. That's the argument. That's the argument between Rebbe and the thing. That's it. Okay, we're both like, sorry, I ran out of steam there at the last line. Okay, good. Anyway, thank you very much. Have a good day. Have a wonderful day.
Had a good workout? Oh, yeah.
This is a big page. I'm telling you, that's why I told you that story. This is a big page. Sure, thanks. There's a lot of stuff on one page.
Yeah.
You know, we say it starts to be humming.
That's the word breath. That's right.
This year also, wow, one breath. Your mom is going through it.